My name is Alexey. I'm project manager here at Devexperts, and today I will tell you about PMBOK 6th edition, and it will be useful for project managers who are not yet familiar with it, and for others who want to know more about project manager's job. Let's start. And there are two reasons why I chose PMBOK in order to get some knowledge about project management. First of all, I never had a specific project manager's education, and all my knowledge was produced by my experience and by some books I read. So all my knowledge looked like this left picture. It was a mess, let's say honestly. And after reading and getting the certificate of project manager professional, my knowledge is way more accurate. I know which parts it consists of, and etc. etc. It provides you with great structure that helps you to manage projects in future. And next good reason to get that certification and to learn PMBOK is this beautiful sign that you will receive if you will pass the exam. It's not very easy to pass it, so it's good to have it. It's a good line in your CV, and also if you know that someone have this sign that he or she passed these exams, this person is aware of modern project management tools, techniques, and other things. So it's a good thing. And a few more words about PMBOK itself. PMBOK is not a single book. Actually, I have no idea how it looks like, what documents it consists of, but it consists of more than one book and more than one guideline. In my imagination, it's bookshelf. And Project Management Institute guys gathered together and created one single book called PMBOK Guide. Right now, the actual one is 6th edition. So there were 5 editions before it, which shows us that this standard is alive and it continues to develop as time goes. And the standard will move forward as project management develops. So if you think now that it's a good idea to read this book and be familiar with project management, please don't do that, because this book is huge. It's more than 1,000 pages and it's not very easy to read. It's good to use it as a reference. If you are already familiar with this approach, with this guide, it will be very helpful for you to get back to it and to read some sections if you forgot them. So my advice for you, if you'd like to get that certification, is to buy some courses or maybe some guide to this guide, but don't go to this book right after this meeting, because most likely you will be very regretful after that. And the key concept of the whole PMBOK is tailoring. The PMBOK is project manager's body of knowledge, and it contains a lot of information that's enough to successfully manage every type of project, every project in the world, let's put it that way. But in your real life, in your real projects, you don't need all the techniques, so you need to adapt this body of knowledge to your real project. Basically, that means that you cut some unnecessary parts of body of knowledge and use only what you need. And since we started to talk about projects, let's do some definitions. Project is something temporary that we do to create unique product, service, or other result, and it has high level of uncertainty. 3 key concepts of projects are time limit, uniqueness, and high level of uncertainty. Please keep that in mind. And project manager is someone who is assigned to the team. He's assigned to lead the team, and he's or her goal is to achieve project objectives. And project manager is one who is responsible for project success. No one will blame the team or other stakeholders of the project if the project will fail. It's solely the responsibility of a project manager. And let's take a look at key participants, other key participants of the project. Usually all projects have sponsor. Sponsor is a person who actually authorizes the project to exist. He provides resources and other stuff that is required for project to be conducted. By the way, let's do some interactive part right now. Try to guess who is playing sponsor's role in our projects usually. You can write it in the chat. Any ideas? Yeah, exactly. That's account managers in Devexperts. So another important person, of course, is project manager, and also projects always has the team, which is working hard on project objectives. And project may involve some other stakeholders such as customers and users, and it's not limited by this list, because our project may affect almost any person in the world, and they will be our stakeholders as well. So every project consists of 5 phases. Every project starts with initiation phase and finishes with closure phase. In the middle, we have planning, execution, and monitoring and control phases. So we see that every phase consists of processes, but that's only one way to classify processes. Another way to classify our processes is to do that by knowledge areas. There are 10 knowledge areas introduced in PMBOK, and you see them on the screen. Total number of processes is 49, and here's second interactive part of this presentation. Try to guess which knowledge area contains most of PM's work. Where does he or she spend most of his or her time? I see many people think it's number 6, 7. Any other ideas? I'm a bit surprised. Anything else? The correct answer is 10, because project manager himself is not the best specialist in all these areas, but his goal is to integrate them between each other in order to proceed successfully and to make the whole thing work. Without integration, it would not be a project, it would not be a team, it would never be a successful project. So in PMBOK, all project management processes are presented as kind of black box, including techniques and tools inside, and some inputs and outputs as well. And here we will focus mainly on project outputs. It will include some artifacts and other stuff that is required for our projects. The first phase of every project is initiation, and the very first process of initiation is to develop project charter. Its output is definitely project charter. Project charter is a document that should contain high-level project description with all high-level details we need to mention before the project starts. For example, it can contain time limits, success criteria, key stakeholder lists, etc. Here at Devexperts, we don't do this document. However, I think we should. But anyway, before project started, we do need those limits, for example, time limits, to have them in mind, because otherwise, how would we measure the success of a project? Next process is to identify stakeholders, and result of it is stakeholder register. It should contain information about all stakeholders of our projects. It definitely will be the team, project manager, etc., some customers, and we can enrich it with all kind of information we need, such as ID, impact, and other classifications that we need. Next big phase of project is planning, and we do need to do some planning. And first process here is actually 10 processes, 10 planning processes. If you recall, there were 10 knowledge areas, and for every knowledge area, we should create a plan. Let me say a few words about these plans. For example, in a scope management, what we do when we create scope management plan, we don't think about scope of our real project, what will we do. We just think about which processes of scope management will we include into the project, which artifacts we will use during planning, execution, and other phases. So we should plan all our 10 knowledge areas, and it's kind of bureaucracy, but anyway, it's a good thing to do that in advance in order to know how you will manage your project and what artifacts you need to do, just a high-level plan of a project. Next process is to collect requirements. Every project should contain customers and other stakeholders' requirements, and it should provide us with requirement documentation. This is not what we have right now. Our great analysts write documents that we call requirements, but they are not requirements. They are more of a scope statement. Requirements is something that some stakeholder want. For example, I want green button. This is requirement, and we should keep this information somewhere in order to track it during the process, in order to not forget any requirements provided by the customer and other stakeholders. So next step is to define scope. We need to create project scope statement. This is what we actually do, and it's great that we are doing that, because how would we manage our projects without this? It's pretty clear. Next step is to create work breakdown structure. We are not doing this specific document. We don't have a document called work breakdown structure. And work breakdown structure itself is a hierarchy of features that we need to do. Though we don't have a document, we have it in other place in our Jira. Do you find this picture familiar? We have PMBOK on the top, which represents the project itself, and on the lower level we have epics, which usually represent high-level features. And under epics we have tasks. So I think our structure in Jira works as work breakdown structure perfectly. Next steps of planning is to create Gantt chart. It's actually consists of 6 processes, but they are all together here because it doesn't make sense to take a look at them separately. And when we create Gantt chart, that's also called as schedule baseline, we apply critical path there to define which tasks we need to do in what order. Next step is to determine budget, which also called cost baseline. Next steps in our planning is work with risks. There are 4 processes there, and the output of these processes is risk register, which should contain, obviously it should contain list of risks we identified, and then any other information that we find meaningful for our risks, such as risk owner, mitigation plan, etc. We don't do this in our projects. At least I never seen this before, never seen any risk register in our projects. But I think it's a good practice, and at one moment we should start doing this because it's definitely good practice used across all companies in the world. We should do that. Next phase is execution, and PMBOK focuses on project managers' tasks in execution phase. So all processes here will show us what project manager should do in execution phase, not the team or anyone else. First of all, we need to acquire resources, then develop team. It actually means make team of those separated people. And team building doesn't mean go to bar or spend some other time in a funny way. It means that we need to work together on plans and make sure that everyone understands goal of project, etc., etc. We need to include people into our project work. Next process is to manage team. It means provide them feedback and resolve conflicts, conduct procurements. Well, we can skip it if we don't have any. Then there are 3 processes of management, and it's the key point of these processes is to check our plan and to think, is it good enough or not? Do we need to change our communications, for example, plan or not? So we need to do it from time to time in order to be up to date with our project. Then next project manager's work is to create meetings in direct and manage project work process. And last but not least, manage project knowledge is about updating lessons learned register. This document is very important for the company. It allows company to share knowledge between projects, between people. It allows us to do very easy onboardings for new team members. But I think there will be a separate presentation for this thing. I'm trying to introduce this into our company. Next phase is monitoring and control. So the very important thing here is to validate scope, and output of it is accepted deliverables. It's very important that we need to get acceptance by the customer, and we need to do it throughout the project during the whole time we conduct project, because it's very important to get customers' feedback as early as possible. And in the end, we need to get their validation on the whole project, like everything is fine or it's not fine, should be fine though. Then we have 10 monitoring and controlling processes, which produces change requests. If you recall, we had 10 planning processes, and if we plan something, we need to control it for sure if we want to successfully finish our project. And change request is another important concept of project management introduced by PMBOK, because change request is basically a document or any other form of intention to change anything in our project that may affect our schedule, cost plan, or any other kind of plans. So obviously change requests appear in all or almost all processes in PMBOK, but it's the first place where we see them here. And that's because our next process is to perform integrated change control. And this process has change request as an input. And output of this process is approved change requests or declined change requests. And I'd like to show you a short example of change control board, how it works. In Market Rebellion, we had this beautiful feature to be done called multiple charts, and there should have been some things synchronized by these checkboxes. And before 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks before the end of the project, when customer approached me and asked me, Alexey, you have a very cool feature. We like it so much, but we want studies to be synchronized as well when we tick appearance checkbox. It's a change request, definitely. So that's how it worked in our real project. Here's what we got from the customer. Then we went to our developers and analysts and in the Experts team. They told us, guys, this is a cool feature, but it's not small. It will take us 1 month at least. And on the other hand, we have only 2 weeks to finish the project. So we definitely could not accept this change request. We declined it. But of course, we agreed with the customers that it will be done separately. And our scope and schedule will remain the same. And of course, studies should be synced via separate checkbox. So that's what project managers should do regularly. If he or she receives a change request from the customer, but actually change request may go not only from the customer, it may go from the team or from any other stakeholders. Last but not least, we have closure phase. And this phase is very important for us as well, because we need to ship deliverables to the customer, update our lessons learned register once again by conducting retrospective with project team. And then we need to release the team in order to proceed with other projects. And let's take a look at the flowchart of processes. I think that every presentation should have at least one cool animation. And here is this one. This flowchart looks waterfallish, but actually PMBOK not forcing us to use it as a waterfallish one. We can go back and forth. For example, we can do planning, then start execution, then get back to planning to change some plans. We should be flexible. We should know. We should not use waterfall approach as one and only. However, looking at this slide, you may ask, where is Agile? And Agile is very near to us. It's another book which was created by Project Management Institute, and they go together actually. First of all, when you will read PMBOK, you will find a lot of Agile tips and tricks. How can you do your project more Agile? And if you don't feel that's enough, you can read another practice guide. The whole book is about Agile in projects. And this year, Project Management Institute should release next edition of PMBOK guide, 7th edition. It should be way more Agile, and that's what I was saying. This guide, this approach, PMBOK, it develops as time goes, and of course it will be way more Agile, because Agile is very popular right now. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them.
We actually already have some questions in chat. So the first one is about a nice pattern for working with risks. Please share it if you have some.
Well, that pattern is described in PMBOK. There are 4 processes to manage risks. Firstly, we need to identify risks. Then we need to perform risk analysis in order to identify most important risks, because obviously our risk register may contain hundreds of risks and we cannot maintain all of them. So we should somehow sort them and maintain only those we can afford. And then we just plan risk responses for our list of risks. That's the very basic framework of risk management. Hope I answered the question.
And there is a link from Elena, from Pavel. Yeah.
Mhm.
And other question, are there any thoughts or mentions of self-managed team within the team responsibility in PMBOK? What is your opinion about it?
I think there are no mentions of self-managed teams in PMBOK because project manager's role is very important there. They highlight it as a necessary one. I think self-managed teams is good unless you want them to be responsible for something, because a project manager is firstly a responsible person, and he or she is responsible for the success of the project. If we're speaking about project that is limited in time and money and other stuff, there should be one person to control that. I think it's almost impossible to do the whole team responsible for that because they will spend a lot of time on communication.
Dima?
Sounds good to me. Great answer.
Okay. Then question from Alexander Volkov. What PMBOK says about those processes in general? For example, feature acceptance by customer. And what if customer doesn't accept the feature just because he doesn't think it's important? For him, no feedback means it's okay, and he thinks it's enough.
Well, PMBOK does not specify such details because definitely it's not a guide how to manage your exactly projects. It just says you need to get some customer acceptance. You need to engage your customer. It's actually a project manager's job to engage customers because customers are obviously our stakeholders. And if there is no feedback from the customer, it's a problem for project manager, because if you don't have any feedback right now, you'll probably get one later, and most likely it will be not what you expect to get. So if you don't have something you expect, you should try to get that somehow. It always depends on project you have. You should do something definitely. Another key approach of project management is to be proactive. Don't sit and wait for things to happen. Think advance.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Alexey, I got a question. Thank you for your presentation. Can you name, let's say, 3 practices or artifacts that you discovered while you were reading the book and getting ready for the exams that you believe are absolutely necessary in Devexperts, like we need to integrate them immediately, and like 1 sentence per each practice to explain why we should integrate them. Obviously, it's the practices that we lack so far.
And the first one is on this slide. I think risk register is definitely a thing we should do, and we should pay more attention to risks, because basically it will allow us to avoid our complicated situations. And this is a well-known practice all over the world, so we should definitely follow it. Next document is requirements documentation. If you recall, it was in our planning phase. So we need to write all requirements. I know it's time consuming and no one wants to do that, and we have a lot of other work, but it's good to have requirements written somewhere in order to track them, because sometimes we fall in a situation when we lose requirements. For example, it was not written, and in the very end of the project, some customer reminds us, oh guys, do you recall we wanted this feature as well? And we go, oh man, no way. Yeah, so this kind of documentation could help us. The third one, I don't know, maybe a Gantt chart. If it's not if we can say that it's not necessarily included into every our project for the time being, we should definitely do this, because critical path is impossible without it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thanks.
From your experience, do you think it is realistic to make a Gantt chart for the project, which is 1 year or more in the till the expected delivery?
I think that's impossible, and I think that's possible. And the key solution here, I think, is to plan on a very, very high level. And there is actually a technique called rolling wave planning. I hope it's introduced in PMBOK as well. It means that we don't need to plan everything on the one level of detailization at once. We plan our closest steps, and then as we approach them, we proceed with planning. So I think Gantt chart is doable. However, it won't be the final version. It will be planned further and further as the project goes.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions?
Did you pass the exam?
Yes, I did.
What was the
Congrats.
score?
There is no score anymore. They just write how was your rate comparing to other people's rate. Mine was above average in almost all of phases. It's split by phases.
Cool.
Will you be the next one who get it?
No way. No way I'm going to read this book.
No need to read that.
You already know everything. Lёsha just told you. And what time did it take to prepare for the exam?
Well, it took quite a while. It took 2 or 3 months, but I spent 1 hour per day max.
Okay.
Does PMBOK say anything about project roles, or like we need to have this and these people, or is it just processes and however they are done?
There is some information about project roles, but not too much of it. There were some in this slide, like every project should contain sponsor, project manager, team, stakeholders, but it doesn't specify it deeply.
I mean, so inside the team, it's like whatever happens.
Yeah, there are many different projects in the world, and there are data science projects, construction projects, development projects. It's impossible to have a common description for all types of projects.
Okay, thanks.